Welcome to this training information video for DAERA's Environmental Farming Scheme. This training is part of a series of online training modules. To complete this training, you must watch this video and then answer the related questions at the end. Further details about the Environmental Farming Scheme, including the information sheets for each option, are available on the DAERA website. This training video is for the option hedge laying, including 2 protective fences. The picture on the left shows a hedge being laid, and the picture on the right shows the hedge after it has been laid with the new protective fences erected. In this training module, we will cover a number of aspects of the investment, including what it is, why you would establish the option, which hedge is suitable for laying, the requirements for year 1, the approved species, the requirements for years 1 to 5. We will discuss record keeping. We will give examples of the DAERA checks that will be carried out. We will discuss the payment rate, and we will provide further advice. What is hedge laying? Hedge laying is restoring an existing hedge by partially cutting through the stems close to ground level and bending them over to create a dense hedge. Any gaps greater than 1 metre and less than 10 metres in the laid hedge are interplanted with at least 5 native woody plants per metre from the approved list. If there were any existing trees present in the original hedge, they should be left unlaid, or new native tree whips can be planted along the length of the laid hedge. The laid hedge should then be protected using 2 protective fences. For the hedge laying option, it is important to note that payment will not be made where a hedge has been cut at the base and no laid stems are present. This option is not suitable where the existing stems are brittle and result in no or minimal laid stems. This option is not suitable where ground conditions will create a health and safety risk. This option is not suitable if the size of the existing stems will create a health and safety risk. This option can be used along with, but not overlapping with, the EFS option, planting new hedgerows including 2 protective fences. Completing these 2 options along the same boundary will create a dense stalk-proof barrier. Why lay a hedge? Hedge laying can increase the biodiversity value of a hedge by providing shelter for wildlife and increasing the food available to the wildlife. Laying a hedge will rejuvenate it and re-establish a dense stalk-proof boundary which should last longer. What hedge is suitable? It is important that you select a suitable hedge for laying. The existing hedge should be 2.5 to 5 metres tall with stems of 5 to 15 centimetres thick at the base. In terms of the amount of work that has to be completed, it is necessary to complete the amount of this option that is detailed in the agreement. At point of application for the scheme, the minimum eligible length of this option is 10 metres and the maximum eligible length is based on the maximum agreement value. The maximum agreement value is £12,500 for up to 25 hectares, plus £26.67 per hectare thereafter up to a maximum of £20,000. There is no maximum threshold for EFS higher level agreements. The Year 1 requirements. Firstly, you must adhere to the scheme requirements and controls as detailed in the option information sheet. These are summarised here. All work must be completed by the 1st of June in Year 1 of the agreement and must be retained and maintained in the same area for the duration of the EFS agreement. You must establish the claim length in the field or fields where it has been approved, and you must erect 2 protective fences as per the EFS specification which can be found on the option information sheet. The stems must be laid over as close as possible to ground level and secured by staking, where necessary along the full length of the boundary. You will need to complete the hedge laying work before the 1st of March in the first year of your agreement. This is to avoid the risk of disturbing birds during their nesting season. All fences will need to be erected by the 1st of June in Year 1 of the agreement, and Any newly planted native trees will need to be protected with a tree guard and stake to the required specification, which is outlined in the information sheet. As previously mentioned, gaps which are greater than 1 metre but less than 10 metres should be interplanted. The list of approved species are shown on the screen. Please note, fuchsia should only be planted if traditionally found in the locality. You must plant or leave unlaid on average 8 trees per 100 metre length of boundary. Newly planted native trees should be planted at least 8 metres apart. Please refer to the diagram shown in this slide. The list of approved native tree species are seen in this slide. Newly planted native tree whips must be suitable native species, must be protected from grazing livestock, must be successfully established, and must be planted and maintained as detailed in a site-specific remedial management plan if the option is to be used as part of an EFS higher level agreement. On this slide, you will see additional tree species that can be planted. Please note that beech, horse chestnut, lime or sycamore should not be planted as a hedgerow tree as they will shade the hedge. The requirements for years 1 to 5. Having laid the hedge in the first year of the agreement, you must retain and maintain the same linear length and location for the duration of the 5-year agreement. You should not cut back the hedgerow trees. If this option is established as part of an EFS higher level agreement, you must establish, retain and manage as detailed in the site-specific remedial management plan. Field records must be kept which detail the length and date completed, the location and all management requirements carried out. As mentioned, records will need to be kept. You must keep field level records each year of the works undertaken for this option and any capital items associated to this option. You may use the format shown here, which is available on the DERA website, or you may prefer to use your own format to record the required information. Please see the separate training module on record keeping for more information. You will need to keep agreement level records each year for the 2 parts of the integrated pest management highlighted here. This means indicating, as shown here by ticking a box, that you have assessed whether there are any issues with harmful organisms or pests in the establishment or maintenance of the options in your agreement, and that you have checked and recorded what measures you have taken to protect the option from such pests. DERA will undertake certain checks to verify that the works proposed and paid for have been completed and are to the required standard. The range of checks done for this option will be based on the requirements and controls detailed in the option information sheet. The checks that DERA undertake include office-based administrative checks, technologically based checks such as control with remote sensing, and on-site checks such as rapid field visits or on-the-spot checks. Some of the checks that may be carried out on this option are summarised in the following slides. DERA will check that the work was completed by the 1st of June in year 1 of the agreement. This work includes hedge laying, interplanting of any gaps, planting native hedgerow trees and the erection of 2 protective fences. DERA will check that the hedge was laid before the 1st of March in year 1 of the agreement. DERA will check that the claimed length is established in the approved field. DERA will check that the length of individual laid hedge is a minimum of 10 metres and that 8 trees per 100 metre length of boundary are planted or left unlaid. DERA will also check to see that the stems have been laid as close as possible to ground level and are secured with stakes, where necessary, along the full length. Gaps greater than 1 metre and less than 10 metres are planted with 5 or more approved native woody plants per metre. And any newly planted approved native trees are planted at least 8 metres apart and are protected with a 1.2 metre tall guard and stake. DERA will check that the claimed length of 2 protective fences meets the EFS specification as outlined in the option information sheet and is erected in year 1 in the approved field or fields. DEER will check that hedgerow trees are not cut back, that field records are completed, and the laid and interplanted hedge and trees are successfully established and maintained for the duration of the agreement. Regarding payment, this option is paid on a standard rate per metre, which includes the cost of laying the hedge, interplanting any gaps, planting hedgerow trees and protecting them with a 1.2 metre tree guard and stake, and the erection of 2 protective fences. The payment rate is £16.04 per metre. This video will now provide further advice. We recommend you make use of the advice. To successfully establish native tree whips or hedging quicks, it is necessary to always keep the roots moist and prevent them from drying out. During dry spells, water the whips or quicks. Make the planting hole big enough for the tree roots. Plant the tree whip or quicks into the same depth they were grown in the nursery. This can be seen by a colour change on the stem. Further information for successful planting is available on the information sheet for this option. The stem must be planted upright with all roots pointing downwards in the soil. When the stem and roots are in the correct position, firm the soil around the stem by treading it with your heel. Weed control is very important in the planted gaps as it is essential for successful hedge establishment. Weed control should be carried out before planting. For weed control, plastic sheeting or bark chippings can be used, or hand weeding can be completed to control weed growth. An approved herbicide may be used if justified as part of the implementation of integrated pest management. Prior to application, if the hedge is a march boundary, you should discuss the option with your neighbour. The hedge should not be laid in a heavy frost. The stems should be laid uphill and secured with stakes to prevent wind damage, and there should be 2 metres between the protective fences. 1 year after laying, you should trim any regrowth into a thick A-shaped hedge. You should mark any trees or plants selected for hedgerow trees so they are noticeable and are not trimmed level with the rest of the hedge. Do not plant tree whips under power lines, near roadsides or close to buildings. What you must do next. Firstly, you must answer the questions regarding this option. To access the questions, please click on the large blue box which is found directly below this video. It is essential that you answer all questions to register that your training on this option is complete. Secondly, you should read the information sheet that relates to this option before you start any work in the field. The information sheet is available on this lesson site and on the EFS section of the DEER website. And finally, if you have further options or capital items in your agreement, you can take the training for them after you complete the questions for this option.